the expression to see is to believe. Does that still hold true? Does to see, to believe still hold true? In what ways doesn't it hold true anymore? Come on, what ways? Who said? AI. Deep fakes, AI. Like, you can't believe anymore what you see. Isn't that true? I mean, what a horrible world we live in that what you see, you can't believe anymore. By the way, if you don't know, in the Jewish tradition, seeing was essential in terms of understanding. Some of you may know the principle of Marit Ayin. That is, what the eye sees is you absolutely hold to be true in what you see. And it actually motivated a number of different laws about misperception. Like, for example, one of the well-known ones is that if you're collecting tzedakah and walking around, you're not allowed to open the tzedakah box and make change from it to give somebody back change. Why? Because someone may misinterpret that act of you just taking out money and assume falsely, right, that you are stealing. So what you see is what is to believe has always been an important factor within Judaism and in Jewish values. And so what do you do today when you can't believe what you see anymore? I mean, how should we respond? What are the implications to this? Share with me, what are the implications of not being able to believe what you see anymore? What, sorry? You lose trust. You lose trust and not knowing if what that person said there is really what they said. I mean, so interesting. I was thinking about this in terms of AI. By the way, I think the Terminator was so prescient in terms of, isn't it true, about computers being able to think and to potentially take over. They never would imagine. It really was prescient in terms of the ideas that once you give control of things, by the way, in warfare to AI, and these are all the issues we're dealing with now. But I don't know if they'd anticipated those movies. I was trying to think back about not being able to to believe what you see. And I don't know if they imagined that actually you'd be able to manipulate reality in terms of a visual. I don't remember if that was ever a theme in there. It is in the Matrix. Right? But by the way, they're living in an alternate reality in itself, and so itself like steps us out of the real world. The idea of not being able to believe, by the way, all of our senses are really important to us. Would we agree? Now, by the way, what's the difference between hearing something? Are you more likely to believe something that you saw or that you heard? Yeah. So questioning, the problem is you're going to question everything. Correct. And which means that you can't trust anything anymore. In essence, you don't know. Now imagine, by the way, how this can be used, right? There are personalities that they could recreate through AI who deliver and who extort people to be able to do something that person would not normally have advocated for. I mean, you can change everything in terms of how do you perceive reality, and that's a problem. By the way, in general, I'm of the opinion that as we evolve in through our society, that our senses are going to become less animalistic in terms of instinctive. I don't know about you. With Google Maps, I have lost my sense of direction. Does that happen to anybody else? No. I used to have was he directionally challenged before? Okay, so that's a different question. Right. I always had a great sense of direction, and I could always trust it. And now it's questioned because I have something else telling me that my instinct is wrong. My instinct to turn somewhere or do something is actually being told, no, don't do that. And I happen to believe, by the way, that this happens long enough that humans will actually lose some of those instinctive traits that we have and capabilities. You trust the camera. It is so great. You trust your camera, which is, by the way, trusting what you see, which is in those famous scenes, right, in terms of your mirror, where it says images are larger than they appear, or right. Or appear larger than they are, right? Because it wants you to know what you think you see is not really what you are seeing. And then that famous scene from Jurassic Park, right? Where it really is close enough. Like, it is there, and you should be cognizant of it. But the idea of people, by the way, who trust, I don't know about you, I have a backup camera in my car, right? And I trust it more than anything else. In fact, I can't drive other cars anymore. I know about you. Would you ever I pull out from a drive, I borrow someone's car, it doesn't have, I go how do I back up? Carefully, right. But we lose that idea of to trust the instincts and what does it mean to be able to live and survive in the world. The idea of, by the way, hearing is important because it's related to the important part of seeing. When you can see something and hear something, isn't it much more likely to validate that experience? In fact, if you have one laid on top of the other, right, more likely that it's going to resonate as being true. Okay, so by the way, the premise of Isaac Asimov and robots and the laws of robotics, the 3 laws, is that the machines will or should, by the way, perhaps know what is better for humankind than humans do. Right? The idea that we are a self-destructive species very often. Would we all agree about that? Okay. So, by the way, what is more important to have a loving machine or a machine that's going to guarantee your existence and to do what's best for you? By the way, one could compare it to a parent. Parents don't do necessarily out of love, but they do to provide safety and to try and do what's best for the child. Know what parents all the time say, I don't care if you love me in this moment. Machines can't distinguish, right? They can only do what they're told. But by the way, they learn from that as well. But if their premise is to do what's best for humanity, then... Now, I want to tell you, we're reading today about the 10 Commandments. By the way, not the receiving of the tablets, I think all of you know. They hear it for the first time, the 10 Commandments. And people often get confused by what actually takes place here. And at the end of the giving of the 10 Commandments, it says all this. It says, all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the blare of the horn, the mountain spoken. When the people saw it, they fell back and stood at a distance. So you all know that description of Mount Sinai, correct? But by the way, the Hebrew, the English, is not quite truthful to the Hebrew. The Hebrew is, V'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot ve'et ha'lafidim. What does it say? And all the people saw the thunder. All the people saw the thunder. How do you see thunder? You can see lightning. Can't see thunder, can you? There are drugs that might be able to help you. So by the way, Rashi says this. They saw that which should be heard, something which is impossible to see on any other occasion. So God created that moment in which they actually could see the thunder. That's Rashi. He's a pshat, pashtan, and he wants to, although his grandchildren accuse him of being too if you will, darshanim, too interpretive in their tradition. Steve?
And yet with all the miracles they saw at Mount Sinai and going there were still some who wanted to go back to Egypt that didn't believe.
Correct. So by the way, about having faith. By the way, having faith in what you see.
But they saw all this and they still didn't have it.
So question is, by the way, you can see lots of things. Somebody can have faith and somebody can not have faith in the same experience. So I think that's important. So now, what does Ibn Ezra, who comes a little bit later, says? He says, now the meaning of the verse is, when Israel saw these wonders, that is, when the people perceived the thunders, that's how it's often translated, perceived, and the lightning, which people normally fear, and the voice of the horn, a sound which had never been heard before, and the mountain smoking, they trembled. Right? It was for if Israel did not remove themselves and they stood off from afar. So what happened was they're talking about the experience of what you see and hear can become very real. That's what Ibn Ezra is saying. It's not just sensory, but it's very real. By the way, any of you, sports, this is perfect. I didn't know you were going to be sitting there, Steve Springer. Right? So by the way, is there a difference between watching a basketball game on TV versus being there courtside? Okay, right? Right? It feels like a different game, doesn't it? Right? When you're courtside and you feel the events going on, it is a very different experience. So being there, so the idea is not just seeing and hearing, but by the way, that it feels like a real experience. That becomes an important part of it. Chizkuni, right? Another commentator says, we're seeing a visual image of thunder. A plain meaning of the verse is that when phenomena normally not subject to being seen had become visible during the revelation, right? To see this is what I have found. It becomes, and what does it mean? To see something for the first time. Isn't that right? That somehow when you see something and you feel it for the first time, that this is a truth, that you have an experience that it feels like it's as if you're really seeing it, even though it's something not seeable. So it is quirky. There you go, quirky theory. The idea is here that for the commentators, this idea of seeing and trying to understand was that it felt real. It wasn't that they could see thunder literally, as Rashi wants you to be able to understand that, but rather the hearing, the seeing, and being there created a moment that felt real, and that they understood this moment to be a real epiphanal, if you will, the moment of theology. We're going to finish up. We're going to head over to the sanctuary. Everybody, let's join the Neshama service and the Torah service. Let's head on over.
Imagine if you were blind at Mount Sinai.
If you were blind. So by the way, I didn't share a comment by Rashi, who says that there was no blind person and no deaf person at Mount Sinai, based on this verse. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so that's how they interpret it. All right, let's walk on over, everybody, and we'll join in.